Let's get to get a word from the president of the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, Comrade Usman Dutse. He joins us online this morning. Good morning and thank you for joining us today. Are you in any way encouraged by when you hear or listen that the president, they're talking about education reforms, they have a retreat in terms of what they need to do to revamp the education sector or the system? Is that encouraging for you that perhaps they just will look your way sooner rather than later, and then strikes become history in this country? Can you hear me, Comrade Usman Dutse?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you now. All
right. So talking about the strike, only yesterday the president had this retreat with the executive council members talking about education and what they need to do. Doesn't that in any way encourage you, having gone on strike, that who knows, they may look your way sooner rather than later?
Okay, thank you very much. You see, our major problem in Nigeria is not the issue of solutions to problems, but the major problem is the commitment and the political will to address some of these issues. These retreats are not the first of its kind. There have been series of retreats, conferences, and workshops on how to address the problem of education in Nigeria. And they've been there. There are a series of results and reports that are in the archives of government, of which, if they use them and implement them effectively, definitely there will be significant solutions to our problems in Nigeria. Quite okay, there is nothing wrong in updating and reviewing strategies in order to address issues. We appreciate that. But what we actually want is the commitment and the political will to implement issues in Nigeria.
Why is ASUP on strike now? Because many remember that not long ago, while you went or threatened to go on strike, at the time there were meetings or consultations with government officials. What went wrong?
Actually, anytime you see unions resort to strike, it's because of the failure of the other side, particularly government, to fulfill its promises. Upon all the assurances given and the promise made by government, usually workers, the unions always respond and give time to government. But if at the end those promises are not forthcoming, then actually the unions will be left with no option, because they may lose hope and confidence in what the government have been promising. Because there are a series of agreements, there are a series of promises and assurances, memorandum of agreement and understanding reached. But at the end, they may end up not being actually implemented or complied by government. That is why you see unions end up to adopt the last option.
What's the nature of the last conversation the union had with government officials?
Well, actually, the Prime Minister of Labour mediated and called for a meeting, convened a meeting with the union. We met with them. At the end of the meeting, we resolved that an MOA was going to be signed. That is, memorandum of action was going to be signed between the union and the government. The Prime Minister promised to provide this memo the next 24 hours, that's after the meeting, of which we waited almost for a week for the MOA to be released, and it wasn't released. After that time already, we had fixed our meeting of our National Executive Council with the hope that that MOA will be presented for next decision to be taken. Up to the time where other decisions were reached, the MOA were not made available. So that led our members to lose confidence in the government side, the Minister of Labour, showing that if they could not provide an MOA within the time they approved, they promised, then how sure are we they can follow up and make sure that the agreements reached are fully implemented or executed?
You are hinging this strike on agreements reached in 2016 with the government. How much of that agreement have the government met to this time?
Yes, there are issues that are still lingering from that agreement of 2010, but there are other developments also which were not part of the previous agreement. If you look at in the last agreement, the issue of the review of the Polytechnics Act is one of the pending issues in the previous agreement. A list of countries 15 migration areas It's part of the previous agreement. Issue of dichotomy is part of the previous agreement. But there are others that the development that came after the agreement, like the issue of need assessment, which was conducted in 2014-13. The proposal was released in 2014 by the Presidential Committee set up by the federal government to review the needs of institutions, particularly public polytechnics. It has been done, reports submitted. Since that 2014, the report was lying idle. Quite okay, this current government has made an attempt to review the report and upward presentation. But our concern is that these things are yet to be approved for implementation. There is no any clear design on how to address implement these policies. The another development that came up was the issue of the shortfall in personnel areas, personnel releases, where our workers have been paid a fraction of their salaries since January 2015 to date. So it has become persistent. Promotion has members have received promotions since 2013, 14, 15, 16. No areas have been paid. Government have made promises, and we're aware that Mr. President have approved money to clear out, to offset up the backlog of workers' allowances, salaries, and areas, but it has not been done. They are hiding under the issue of verification, which has been conducted over and over again without any implementation. But, the schools that have been cleared after verification have been waiting without implementation.
Are you in any form of dialogue with the government at this moment?
Yes, there is an invitation for a meeting this week.
When precisely? Tomorrow, next, or Friday?
No, today and tomorrow.
Okay, brilliant. So that means there's a ray of hope that your union will begin to address some of these issues, because the concern is that the polytechnics have not been given that kind of priority as the universities. Is that the case?
Yes, actually, this is a societal problem and mindset. Actually, the country attach more priority to one subsector than the others. Adequate attention is not always given as you indicated. And this one has to do with the mindset of the policymakers and as well as the community in general. People don't attach value, don't have much regard for technical and for technology education in the country. And we believe that has the impact or implications.
Well, if you can hear me, comrade, I'm just wondering, one of the demands which you highlighted now is a review of the Polytechnic Act. So are you thinking that, is that a function of the executive arm of government, or you should be looking to the National Assembly? And why would you go to strike on such a matter?
Government is government. The legislature, the executive, and the judiciary are all part of the same government.
Okay, then. All right. I think we lost them, did we? Have we? All right, that's Usman Dutse, the president of the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, just speaking to us. So he says government is government about
some of these things. He has thrown it directly to them and let them try to solve it. Thank goodness that they're going to be having.
The answer they'll tell you is that, look, well, you may say government is government, but there are tiers of government. And there are arms of government, I beg your pardon. So if you say the executive are not the one, maybe they want them to initiate a bill to amend that act, but it will take a while. It will take a process. But you know how unions do. Maybe they put it in there so that they say, look, this is part of what we want, but if you can't achieve it now, because that's going to be dependent upon the National Assembly.
It's all pretty
how
much,
long it takes.
And the good part of it is that they're having a meeting between tomorrow and next.
Yeah. And
so we'll be expecting that some resolutions are reached, and maybe some of those demands that have not been met since they started this in 2010 and having the last meeting in 2016 would have a way forward for the Polytechnic Union.
Yeah, and then we could see the papers awash with the president backing the planned disengagement of about almost 22,000 teachers in Kaduna, and it's all over the place. And you know, different strokes, different folks, different views about how they think it should go. We all seem to agree there's a problem, but how we should approach that problem seems to be the bone of contention in many of these cases, as you've seen with NUT, with NLC, all threatened fire and brimstone.